Great.
Good morning, everyone. Just joining us from the waiting room. My name is Sam Moody. I'm the Associate Director of the Colorado Media Project. Thank you so much for joining us for this information session on our Closing Coverage Gaps grant. I will jump us into a slide deck momentarily to talk through our agenda today, but would love to hand it off to Kimberly Spencer to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you were in the last webinar, thank you so much for being interested in both opportunities and spending some time with us. I am excited about this grant opportunity as well. So what is new about this? So in the past, if you have received an Advancing Equity grant, it has been project specific, and we are changing that to general operating. We just think that that is more impactful, more helpful. And so we are excited to move away from project type support for this grant and move into general operating. Other thing I just want to highlight is if after this call you have specific questions, feel free to reach out to us, get some time on our calendar. We would much rather talk through your idea before you put a lot of effort into a proposal if you are unsure if it is a fit. What we do not want is for you all who have so many things going on, creating a proposal that just is not competitive. So please use us as a resource if you have questions specific to your organization and fit and all of that. Happy to jump on a call and talk through those things. And now I will turn it back over to Sam to walk us through the presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Give me just a moment to share my screen. Back to the Zoom controls. There we go. Could I ask for a thumbs up from somebody? I can see, there we go, coming through for everybody. All right, this is our Closing Coverage Gaps grant information session. Again, my name is Sam Moody. I'm the Associate Director of the Colorado Media Project. We just heard from Kimberly Spencer, our director. For those who are new to the Media Project, let me introduce a little bit about who we are. The Colorado Media Project is a pooled fund supported by local and national foundations that serves local news ecosystems here in Colorado, and more broadly, the civic information ecosystem of our communities here in the state. Within Colorado's local media ecosystem, we serve as a funder, a catalyzer, and an advocate. As a funder, we pool funds from a number of different foundations and pass those through via strategic grants to newsrooms and community organizations to spur innovation, sustainability, equity, inclusion, and resilience amongst Colorado's local news ecosystem and the organizations that serve and support it. As a catalyzer, we support and facilitate connections, conversations across the sector, and collaborations that help surface new and sustainable approaches to addressing gaps in our local news and information ecosystem, combating mis and disinformation, deepening civic participation, and helping the sector adapt in a rapidly changing information environment. And as an advocate, we commission research and share learning amongst our grantees and other partners. And we leverage our collective influence to bring more knowledge, allies, and resources, better public policies, and practices in the field to supporting a healthy civic news and information ecosystem here in Colorado. Let's come on, advance. There, and back one. So who do we fund as a part of that? CMP has been funding local newsrooms across the state for 6 years. Here's a snapshot of last year. All of our grantees, we made 72 direct grants totaling almost $1.4 million to 66 different grantees across the state. These range from small, like single person or family-owned newsrooms in small communities across the state, to collaborative projects and some of the largest state or regional reporting projects and organizations that serve Colorado's communities. Many of you, I'm sure, see yourself here, and we're glad to have you back. And if you're not seeing yourself, well, thank you so much for coming and exploring the work we do, and we hope to be able to support you as well. Where do we get, how is the support possible? Colorado Media Project is housed and fiscally sponsored by one of our contributors, the Rose Community Foundation. And this year's 2025 Closing Coverage Gaps grant is made possible by support from the Colorado Trust, the Gates Family Foundation, Rose Community Foundation, Press Forward, the Colorado Health Foundation, and the Democracy Fund. So the information session today, here's what we're going to talk through to help you get ready to understand if you're eligible for this grant application and submit a competitive application. We'll talk through the background and objectives of this grant. I'll walk you through the application timeline. We'll discuss applicant eligibility criteria, who is eligible to apply for this grant. We'll do a deep dive under the hood into the selection priorities that CMP's review committees are going to be paying attention to as they're reviewing your applications. And then I'll walk you through the nitty-gritty of the application process, how to log into the portal, etc. We'll get through all that in about 15, 20 minutes, which will reserve a generous portion of time for questions from all of you. And what I'll say is, as I'm going through the sort of details presentation portion of this info session, walking you through the slide deck, please flag any questions that you have about anything that I'm talking about or that come up for you in the chat. We'll start with those questions when we hit the Q&A session, and then also feel free to raise your hand and verbalize any questions at that point as well. So let's dive right in. A little background. The Closing Coverage Gaps grant is built on 3 years of previous Advancing Equity in Local News grant making from CMP, which was in turn built on a 2 to 3 year process of community study and review and report production by 4 community groups here in Colorado, organized by Free Press and then the Colorado News Collaborative. Our African-American, Latinx, Asian, South Asian, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, and Indigenous voices groups worked together between 2020 and 2022 to produce these 4 voices reports, which are available on our website, and which articulate clear, actionable, specific needs and requests from these communities to Colorado's local news ecosystem around specific needs that these communities have that are not being met. The Closing Coverage Gaps grant this year explicitly expands the focus of our advancing equity work to include broadly rural and non-English speaking communities as well, recognizing the specific needs and sort of underserved nature of those communities when it comes to access to vital civic information and local news that serves them. For those who are familiar with CMP's previous grant making here, the Closing Coverage Gaps grant really is an evolution and combination of our previous project-based advancing equity grants and our general operating in multi-year community news network grants. Our objective very much is to get to a place where the grant making we are making under Closing Coverage Gaps is multi-year. Right now, we have funding contributions that enable us to commit to single-year funding in 2025, 26. But we're absolutely aiming to get to a place where we're providing long-term sustainability to key newsrooms here in the state. Let me go back to our objectives. So the Closing Coverage Gaps grant will provide flexible operational support to newsrooms that provide vital services to traditionally underserved communities in Colorado, including rural communities, BIPOC communities, and non-English speaking communities. These grants are intended to help newsrooms with strong, existing, trusted relationships with these vulnerable and underserved communities. The CMP funding will be general operating and is intended to help newsrooms invest in their own organizational sustainability, build on those trusted relationships they have with their audiences and the communities they serve, and strengthen their editorial coverage of issues vital to the communities that they serve. The timeline for applying for this, Open call opened in late May. Today is June 13th. We're here in this information session. Most important next date is the application deadline. Applications for the Closing Coverage Gaps grant are due at 5 p.m. Monday, June 30th. Not midnight, 5 p.m. Get your grant application in and then go enjoy your evening. We'll then take July to review applications with CMP's review committees, which include funder representatives, local news industry representatives, and community representatives. Those review committees will make their recommendations, and grant decision notifications will be sent to all applicants by August 6th. For applicants whose proposals are approved, that notification will include a contract to sign from Rose Community Foundation. If your proposal is approved, you'll have a week to reply with a signed contract, with a note on also verifying fiscal sponsorship for-profit newsrooms. I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. But all of this is with the objective of announcing the grantee cohort at CMP's local news summit at the Colorado Press Association's annual convention on August 14th. More broadly speaking, these are one-year grants. So funding will start in August 2025 and continue through end of July 2026. All funding from this grant must be expended by July 31st, 2026. And there will be a final financial report due in August of 2026. Who is eligible to apply? Applicants must meet all of these following requirements. You have to have been in operation and publishing since at least January 1st, 2023. These grants are not designed for brand new organizations. They are designed for organizations which have been serving communities for at least 2 years. You have to demonstrate a commitment to editorial excellence, editorial independence, and transparency. The organization or newsroom must be located in Colorado and/or primarily serving Colorado communities. So organizations that serve multiple communities outside of Colorado are eligible, but you must primarily serve Colorado communities. And this grant is designed for organizations that have an annual operating budget of less than $1 million.
Can I add one thing that we probably should have said in the last conversation, but also wanted to just clarify, if you are serving communities outside of Colorado, this money is restricted to your operations in Colorado. So I think that's just an important piece to add.
That is clever. And I'm sorry, in this slide deck, I am actually missing a bullet point. There we go. You are also required to have completed the Colorado Local News Survey in 2025. This is a statewide survey run by the Colorado News Collaborative. And it's a way to help journalism serving organizations and funders like CMP better understand the state of local news in Colorado. If you've completed the survey in previous years and you're not sure if you have completed it in 2025, all you have to do is email Allison Cooper at Collab. She'll be able to provide your newsroom with a personalized link to your profile in the survey. If you've never completed it before, you can complete it right there. If you have completed it before, you will not have to re-enter all of your information. It's all been saved in there, and you'll just have to update anything that is new for 2025. Advance. There we go. This grant is open to 501c3 nonprofit newsrooms and organizations. It is open to university or college student newsrooms that are producing original reporting that is community facing, not just serving an internal student body. And it is open to for-profit organizations and newsrooms, with the caveat that starting this year, there are some CMP grants that do require for-profit organizations to apply with a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. The good news is it is incredibly easy to get a fiscal sponsorship as a for-profit newsroom in Colorado. Collab, the Colorado News Collaborative, is providing them. You can get signed up and verified in about a week. All you have to do is email Allison Cooper. Her email is listed there. The reason we are doing this is in an era where there is increasing philanthropic support for local newsrooms at the state level and nationally, we also recognize that not all of those organizations are set up to grant to for-profit newsrooms without a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. So this is our way of communicating to for-profit newsrooms that if a portion of your revenue strategy includes grants, you should absolutely have a fiscal sponsor. It's going to increase the pool of funding available to you. And the Colorado News Collaborative's fiscal sponsorship is incredibly easy to set up. It's incredibly affordable. Their fees are at an industry low. And it's just the best practice that you should be doing. So flag on that. Feel free to reach out to Allison or myself with any questions about that. Final additional detail is, again, we hope to announce the grantee cohort here in time for the Colorado Press Association's annual convention and CMP's local news summit on August 14th through 16th. Please flag these dates on your calendar. We'll be gathering all of our grantees there. And even if you are not approved for this grant, highly encourage you to join for this event. Kimberly and I are working closely with the Press Association team to build out the agenda and the speakers and the opportunities that will be available for newsrooms at the Press Association's convention this year. It's going to be an absolutely incredible schedule of speakers and workshops and hands-on resources for newsrooms. So save those dates. All right. So now we're going to talk through the selection priorities. These are the things that are going to be front of mind for the review committee as they're reading your applications. So that means these are things that it's going to be really good for you to address clearly in as you're drafting your applications. So the review committee is going to look at the quality of proposal plans. They're going to look for proposals that exhibit clear objectives, a realistic time frame, strong buy-in from leadership and partners, and that is properly scaled and sustainable for your organization. So when you're talking about what this funding will enable you to do in your application, these are the things you want. This is the way you want to be able to talk about that. Really important for this grant, they're going to be looking at the quality of relationship you have with your community and your audience. There are questions, and there's an opportunity for you to describe that relationship. We're going to look for proposals that demonstrate a clear understanding of what your community's information needs are, strong engagement and feedback practices from your newsroom with that community, and an integration of both into your organizational plans. We're really looking for organizations that are not providing coverage about a community, but that are providing coverage for a community. That's a pretty clear and important distinction. The review committee is going to be looking at the potential impact of funding for organizations applying. So we're looking for projects that will have a strong impact on the organization applying and on the community that it serves if it's well executed. And we're going to be looking for, organizations for whom grant support is going to be really meaningful. That's part of that $1 million budget cap on this grant application. CMP really is moving to a place where rather than making many small grants, we're looking to make right-sized, significant investments via our grant making that will transform newsrooms' ability to serve their communities and sustain themselves. And given the funding that we have available for this grant application and the size of the grants, that is a consideration that is being taken into account, and that sort of generates that $1 million budget cap. Finally, we're going to be looking at organizational uniqueness and fit for the grant opportunity. Again, we're looking at applicants that play a unique role in the state or regional or local information ecosystem, that produce coverage that directly serves the priority community or communities, and that exhibit a strong commitment to advancing equity and maintaining and building those trusted relationships that they have. All right, so now this is where we get into the technical details of applying. Colorado Media Project is fiscally sponsored by the Rose Community Foundation, and we use their grant portal to manage applications. So the deadline to submit your proposal through the Rose Community Foundation's grant portal portal is 5 p.m. on Monday, June 30th. You'll log into the Rose Community Foundation's grant portal via this link. And this is what the login page looks like. If you have ever applied for a CMP or any other Rose Community Foundation grants, you can log in with your old account. If you've never applied for a grant before via the system, you'll create a new account. That's right down here. That'll bring you to their open call opportunities. You'll select the Colorado Media Project Closing Coverage Gaps grant. Once you log in, there will be a little apply button down here next to the preview button. And that will take you to the grant application. Once you are in that application, I do want to flag that you are able to download a Word document, which includes all of the questions you'll have to answer in completing this application. It's some people prefer, and it's honestly a great grant writing practice to work offline as you draft your responses. That way you're in control of the document, and when it's saved, there's no issues about a grant portal hiccuping with an internet connection and not saving the latest version of your answer. It's easy to share that grant, that Word document around with your internal team to get another set of eyes, do a little, we love editing here. But here's the most important part. You then have to remember to go and copy and paste those responses you drafted back into the application portal. Please do not email me a Word document with all of your answers. That won't count. You have to submit it through the portal. That's how we manage the review process with the review committee. So that's a tool for you to use, but please make sure you remember to submit your application through the portal. And now I'm going to get rid of my screen share. I'm going to bring our faces back and let's go through some questions. There we go. Now I can see you all. Kimberly, looking at the chat, do we have any questions rising to the top? Perfect.
Yeah, so the first question is for Tim. It says, might an organization be eligible if they are teetering on the 1 million operating budget mark or expect impacts from potential loss of other funding sources to drop budgets below that threshold? I would say yes, you would be eligible. As you're going through, I would suspect that you're probably going to go through a rebudgeting process. So when you are doing that with what you are anticipating for the year, if it comes underneath that $1 million mark, yes, I would say that you would be eligible for that. And we're looking at your operating budget to determine kind of that threshold.
Absolutely. Couple of quick technical questions I'll hit in order. Vicky Collins, yes, 501c4s are eligible as well as 501c3s. If your local media foundation fiscal sponsor is a 501c4, that is okay. Anya, yes, we just wrapped up our info session on the other open call that CMP has open right now with the same deadline, June 30th. That's the Newsroom Sustainability Grant. You can absolutely apply for both. The review processes are separate and done by different review committees. Yeah, organizations are eligible for both grants can apply to both.
I would just say make sure that they are distinct applications. So don't take kind of the same proposal and submit it for both, because it just won't be competitive through the process.
Very differently focused grant proposal. And Dolly, I see you noticed a past due label. I will double check that. There may be a little hiccup in the grant deadline, or it may be that you're looking at a previous report due from a previous grant. I'll look into that on your account and let you know where we're on that. Other questions? Grant amounts. The operating fund grants from the Closing Coverage Gaps grant in 2025 will range from $10,000 to $30,000. So this is with the average grant being about $20,000. This is a move towards fewer larger grants that can more significantly impact individual newsrooms. For those who have been long-term CMP grantees, our advancing equity grants tended to be sort of cap at 20,000, and most of them were in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. So this is a shift towards that. We do anticipate awarding at least 50% of these grants to newsrooms serving communities outside of the Front Range urban corridor. Which I think is a good flow into Nathan's question about talking a little bit about what gaps this grant is intended to close. No, the gaps that this grant is intended to close are very specifically focused on community access to civic information and local news coverage that directly serves their information needs. Across Colorado, we know that like if you are a non-English speaker, or you're a member of a BIPOC community, or you live in a rural community, your access to local news that meets your needs and is sustainable, like the organizations themselves are likely to sustain, is at risk and is more limited than if you speak English and live in Metro Denver. So broadly speaking, those are the kinds of gaps that this grant is intended to help newsrooms close. We do not have criteria, and this is sort of jumping down to B's question. We are not judging our the applications based on solely based on the identity of the newsroom leadership or ownership, though we do take that into account. The real thing that we are looking at is, what is your relationship with these communities and how well does your newsroom serve their needs? And again, this is the simplest way to describe the headline is, we are looking to support newsrooms that are doing reporting that serves the information needs of these communities, not newsrooms that do reporting that is about these communities.
Or I would say solely about these communities. Yeah. So just making sure that it really is community-based and it's for those constituencies.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So I think where my brain is going is around news deserts, places that really don't have news currently, but some of the languaging in the slide says, well, how are you engaging with your community currently? But, if we're looking at going into a news desert, that means we don't have a relationship with that community yet. And so I'm just trying to understand and get some clarity around that, because it's, again, we don't know yet because we're not in there, because by definition, there's nobody there.
This is a great question. I think in this case, it really does, like, in the case of like the gap being solved as a news desert, you would have to speak aspirationally or in terms of plans for that engagement. The thing that that sort of proposal would be assessed on is, okay, if no one's serving this audience, why is your newsroom the right one to move in there and serve that audience's need? You should be able to answer that question compellingly.
I also think if you're intending to go into a news desert and stand something up, I think we're also going to be looking at how much would that actually cost, and are we the only funder? Are there other funding streams out there? Kind of what is long-term sustainability for whatever you might be standing up? Because what would make this more competitive is, are you thinking out 3 years, 5 years? What does that look like? And how does this funding help you get there? If it's, hey, we see, so really putting the thought through, what's the strategy and what is kind of long-term sustainability look? Because if it is just this funding and there is no long-term plan, I don't know that when reviewers are reviewing this, they're probably going to say, is this a good investment versus someone that's already existing doing the work, when we have to make really hard choices around competitiveness. So that would be kind of what else I think needs to be included in a proposal.
Gotcha. And thanks for that. And I don't want to take up all the time, but it's kind of a follow-up question. In one of the intro slides around the funding, you guys mentioned multi-year flexible support. can you explain a little bit how that might work within CoLab?
Well, for CMP, currently, we do not have the ability to do multi-year. I know we have tested that in the past with some other grant funds. Right now, we have to have commitments from our funders in order for our executive committee to feel comfortable us making commitments to publishers for multi-year funding. So that is aspirational. That is where we are hoping to get in the next 2 to 3 years, just so that it cuts down on the work that we are asking you all to do in terms of annual renewals and all of that, but we are working towards that. The one thing that we are doing this year is moving from project-based support to general operating, so that you all have the flexibility to use that funding for what you need. We trust you all as, leaders of your organizations, kind of knowing what those needs are. So being able to remove some of those restrictions, I think, was important. And then really right-sizing the grants. And that's why we put a cap as to organizational budget size, just so that we can make sure that with the money that we have to invest now, that we can have the biggest impact versus, giving a $5,000 grant to an organization that's has a $5 million budget. That's probably not going to have the impact that we want. So really thinking through grant sizes, budget size, and having this kind of lay the groundwork for us to get to larger grants and multi-year is where we are. That is where we are planning to go.
Well, thank you.
Yep. Yes, I'll just verify that this recording and the slide deck will be posted to our website and shared via email with everyone on this call. So you'll have access to all those links in this Q&A as well. And Dale, a question about non-English speaking communities. So again, priority communities are focused on which communities your newsroom serves and how you serve them. But so yes, within that category, if the audience you serve is a non-English speaking community with non-English information and news needs, yes, a competitive proposal would come from an organization that was publishing in those languages.
And that includes, my question was, both the organization or the news media is also non-speak English, including myself. So I was just wondering, is that a good candidate for both, or is that something we just need to focus on only for the community that we just serve, for the second English speaking community, which is our listeners, or both organization as well? Because I know my question is to differentiate, because some news rooms do serve the non-immigrant community or non-English speaking, but they still broadcast in English, which is, we don't understand, some of us. That's what I was trying to say. Is it both? It reflects in both sides, or because if we do that, sometimes the translation cost comes in, and we trying to do our news media will be broadcasting in the language they understand, so that will cut off the translation use money. What I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I'm understanding your question is like you're describing the gap that this grant hopes, one of the gaps that this grant hopes to address, which is folks who speak languages other than English often and live in a community where there's a lot of news published in English. A strong application for this grant would be one that focuses on, from an organization that is doing that translation work and making information accessible to people in their native tongue.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions in the chat, or that folks just want to raise their hands on? Seeing anything, and I know that a lot of you have been with me since 10 a.m. through another one of these earlier. So I will stay on for a few more minutes and keep the recording on to capture any last questions that arrive for anyone as we're wrapping up. But I think for now, I'll say thank you so much for joining us. I will remind everyone that the deadline is 5 p.m. Monday, June 30th. And we very much look forward to receiving your applications and learning a little bit more about what you're planning to work on this year. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sam. Thank you. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sam, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have lots of questions. Um, so are you looking for collaborations on this one too, like you were on the other one? And then my other question is, you know, with Bucket List, our ability to serve the community and offer reporting for different populations, you know, has really been predicated on us being able to bring in students of color, Hispanic students, Black students, Asian students, queer students. And so that is really how we would like to present a application, is to help us shore up our service to BIPOC internships and apprenticeships, which show representation in our newsroom and in turn diversify our coverage. Is that something that would apply for this? I mean, I think it certainly is worthy, but, and you were looking for organizations that are unique, which is certainly who we are and what we are, but is this something that would be considered where it would actually help us beef up our reporting?
Yeah, I'll answer the question a little bit more broadly for other folks considering their applications. So this is general operating funding. So how you use it in your organization, really, it is flexible funding. So like for staffing that represents and is connected to the communities, priority communities that you serve. Yes, those are all absolutely eligible ways that this operating funding could be spent. I will say, you know, this application is, when you get into the questions, some are focused on, you know, what this funding would enable your organization to do, what you would use it for. But a lot more of the sort of selection criteria and the places that the reviewers are going to be paying attention to, the questions they're really looking at are going to be around, like, what is your relationship with these communities? How do you serve them? And again, I'll highlight that there's a big difference between reporting on a community and reporting for a community. And they're really going to be looking at newsrooms that have a track record and good, solid in-place practices for reporting for a community.
And what about collaborations?
Oh, and on the question of collaborations, again, so a little bit less of a focus on this. This grant is designed to provide operating funding to an organization, not a specific project. A lot of newsroom collaborations tend to be project-based. Now, I will say, if a collaborative group of newsrooms, you know, I think of an example, you know, as an example, like, you know, the Colorado Ethnic Media Exchange is a group of newsrooms that serves, you know, a bunch of non-English speaking communities. That's the sort of entity that could absolutely apply, you know, collaboratively for this, as an example.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sam and Kimberly. Have a good weekend, and I'm going to drop off now.
Thanks, Vicki.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
All right. I think with that, we're at our time, unless there's any last questions being flagged. Oh, Ruby, I saw you just dropped off and rejoined. I will stay on long enough to find out if you have a question.
Oh, no.
All All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And we'll look forward
Sam
to
and
your
Kimberly, I
reviews.
just had one thing I wanted to run by you guys, not necessarily
Okay.
for the whole group.
Okay.
All right. Let me stop my recording and we'll switch over.